Hey, everybody, welcome to the webinar, 7 Steps to Scale Your Content Without Losing Your Mind, which I think is a great title. In full disclosure here, Jessica and I had already recorded this webinar live, and we had a whole bunch of people on it, and then it went into the abyss of the digital world, and we lost the recording, and we promised everybody that we were going to get them a recording, those people who registered, and so this is an actual re-recording of what we did. So there's going to be some differences there because we do this a little bit extemporaneously. And I'm also not going to do the icebreaker, which we had actually talked about some fun stuff, but we're going to really dive right into this. And I just want everybody to understand creating long form content is wonderful in itself, but if you don't know how to do what we call the atomic content method, how to really scale and deconstruct your long form content to make lots of pieces of other content, you're just working too hard. You don't need to work that hard. And we're going to deconstruct all of these different things with these 7 steps. So did I miss anything, Jessica? Are we ready?
We're ready. Let's get into it.
Is this you?
This is normally you.
This was me. Okay. Wow. Okay. I already got ahead of myself. All right. So, okay. Right. I'm sorry. I do know exactly where we're at. And in fact, I'm going to do not really a shameless plug, but I'm going to talk about something that I didn't talk about in the original webinar, which is I just retook our influence readiness test in our PodRocket Influence Academy because I hadn't taken it in a while and I wanted to see how my score had increased. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we have 7 different sorts of areas. These are the 7 different rocket boosters that are vitally important for you to accelerate your influence. And when all of these are pointing in the same direction, right, then the rocket makes it to space. But if one of these is really off kilter, you're going to blow up, basically. It's, using a rocket analogy here. So all of these need to be pointing in the right direction. And we're going to talk today about how you can make sure that all of them point in the right direction. You have to make sure you know who you're talking to. You have to have a really good plan. You also really need to make sure that you have a well-defined brand, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. How do you talk about how great you are without coming across as a schmuck, which is how to articulate your expertise. Also, how to compound your credibility. How can you make it so that you are more omnipresent than you are currently? How to share more appropriately, and then we're going to talk about how all of these things work together. So these are these 7 rocket boosters that Kirk and I have built really since 2017 in order to help you really truly accelerate your influence.
Excellent. And I say we just jump right in.
Oh yeah,
to our first rocket booster, which is, actually, let's set this up a little bit. Matt, you were talking about long form content is important and it has its place, which we will talk about. Mm-hmm. Without a system in place, it can be very exhausting to continue creating fresh new content. So we want to set up a little bit about content atomization here, because that's going to come up again and again. And that is when you are taking your long form content, maybe it's a podcast, a long form video, a blog, and you are transforming it into all kinds of other types of content. And in addition to saving your time, it's just more effective marketing, because you are then able to spread your unique expertise and perspectives across different channels. So you're no longer relying on your entire audience to, say, listen to a podcast, because maybe some of them, they're just not interested right now. Well, now you can reach them in other ways, and you could reach them over and over again. And the first rocket booster is audience. And we are starting with this because to really create any sort of effective content, you have to know who you're creating it for. Because the truth is, you could be atomizing and have a really efficient system, but it might not be effective if your content is not speaking to your audience. You need to know the demographics and psychographics. Demographics are anything that might show up on a census form. Matt, as you know, your name, your location, maybe what language you speak, and then psychographics are really what drives people's behavior. What are their values and personalities? And knowing these details can really shape how you talk to people. Really, literally, what kinds of language are you using? Even what pop cultural references are you making? If you mention the Muppets, do they remember that? I hope so. But, does that resonate with them or not? And then we get into subgroups where hopefully you have a niche, but you might have niches within that niche that you're creating different content for. Let's say a first-time business owner versus a serial entrepreneur. And then values and goals, what do they want to achieve? And then where do you and your content come into play to help them with that? And then similarly, obstacles, what keeps them up at night and how do you help them with that? How do you help them get to a state where things are much better? And then my favoritist one, Matt, I heard you say the word favoritist earlier. Now I'm stealing it. So attraction and timing is, well, why now? What prompts them to seek you out? I think about right now, it is April and we're like summer's coming. I feel it. And I'm thinking about wedding season, real estate season. So you have prospects and clients who are gearing up. Now, how can your content come in to help them prepare a budget for, either of those two things? And then finally, Hangouts is, where does your audience spend time and how can you be strategic about showing up? When I say strategic, I am strongly suggesting that although it may sound great and Atomization makes it possible, that you don't be everywhere at once. Maybe choose one or two channels. And the reason I say that it is because we're not just copying and pasting. We're not posting and ghosting. The engagement is so important. So when you're thinking of how many channels you're showing up on, think about your resources and make sure that you have time to be engaging with your audience and building those relationships.
Once you have that level of foundation to truly understand who you're talking to and why you're talking to them and how you're going to add value to your life, then you have to really make some really tough decisions. And part of the tough decision is really trying to figure out, what are you doing this for, man? Like, why are you creating content? What is your ultimate goal? And it can't always be get new clients. It just can't, right? Because part of what you want to do is, if you're actually trying to build a business, not just a practice, is you need to focus on these four things. How are you going to elevate your brand and have people understand who you are, what you do, and why you do it? Well, we know that you're going to do this through becoming viewed as a thought leader. Now, that is not a throwaway word, nor is the word influence. This is what people are looking for. In fact, Jessica, I was just on a podcast this morning, and this guy was talking about helping create content for a concrete company. And I was like, dude, that sounds awesome. And he's like, this guy loves concrete. Like, he knows everything about concrete. And he was like, you would think that would be boring as hell. And he's like, this guy's created unbelievable levels of content surrounding concrete, how to use it, when to use it, different. I mean, he was just so excited about it, right? And I love that sort of stuff. All of you who are listening to this right now, you have something that you want to go extra on and be super nerdy, right? It doesn't matter what that topic is, but this is why you become influential, but you have to have that hyper focus. And of course, all of you want to be able to bring in new business. I totally get it, right? But the one thing that you do need to keep in mind as a business owner is it is much easier to retain an existing client than it is to get a new one. In fact, it's usually 10 to 100 times more expensive to bring in a new piece of business than it is to retain existing clients. And when you have great content and your clients look at you as an influencer and a thought leader, and they understand who you are and what you do, then you are going to have the opportunity to bring in new business, because it's easier to refer to somebody who all of those things. And it's also easier to refer somebody to content than it is to call my person, because nobody does that anymore, right? Now, I don't think anybody really does. And if you make sure that you're focusing on what you want from your show, then allocation of time is going to be easier for you to swallow that pill, because like in our system, it takes about 4 hours a month to do everything that we do for our clients, right? That's your commitment. If you're doing this yourself, you want to double or triple that. But if you know that you're going to be known as the person, you're going to be retaining great clients, you're going to be looked at as a thought leader and an influencer, and you're going to be bringing in new business, guess what? You're going to spend the time. We know you will, because there's real value there. What, did I miss anything there, Jess?
Well, I don't think so. And I think this is setting us up so well for the next part about creating your pillar content, because now you have your big picture goals. We know that you want to become an authority, you want to be known for something, and also have a channel for your enthusiasm, even something really cool, granular, like concrete. Now, the question is, what are you creating? And this long form content we spoke about earlier is something like a podcast, a blog, an article. It's something that you are creating routinely, regularly, and that you are expending a considerable amount of effort, energy, research into. If you are the thought leader yourself, you're pouring your thought leader into this. If you're watching this and you're on the marketing team, you're extracting, maybe you're interviewing the subject matter experts in your organization. A lot of energy going into this, and that's totally fine because it's really going to pay out when you start atomizing it all. Now, what to create is the question. And if you're watching this and you're like, I already know, like I'm already creating this, this could be an opportunity to reassess what you're doing, maybe refine it a little bit. And the first question on the left here in the yellowish circle is really, what do you enjoy? Like, what would you enjoy doing? Often the focus is on, well, what does my audience want? And that is 100% true. It's about them, but it's also about you. Because if you're just trying to get yourself to do something, like I like writing, but say you didn't like writing an article and it feels like homework, that's going to be hard to keep up. And I really think that that lack of like wanting to do it is going to show up in the content. And if it's hard to think about what do you enjoy, maybe you just haven't been engaging in a creative endeavor for the last little while, think back to what you enjoyed in childhood. And I was like a little bit of a theater kid. I don't think on the level that you were, but I took some acting classes. I was in West Side Story. I have the experience of speaking into a mic. And then I was away from that for so long. And then I moved into this co-hosting webinars, and I'm not going to say it felt completely natural, and these things don't feel necessarily have to feel, oh, I'm a natural at this, but there was a little bit of something in me, a little bit of spark that I just lit again. So if you're watching this, what is that spark that you can light? And then, of course, what does your audience want? How do they consume their content? Are they busy people who are listening? They want to listen while they're commuting and driving their kids to soccer practice. Are they those deep divers that want an article with graphs and charts? That really matters. And then, of course, your time and resources, because this has to be consistent. You're not going to build authority if you just show up once in a while. And how do you build a relationship? Either by showing up once in a while. So what can you do over and over again? And keeping in mind that you can adjust your frequency. I would say it's not all or nothing. So if you want to podcast and you can commit your resources to doing that once a month, start doing it once a month, and then, maybe ramp it up to twice a month, but do have that goal in mind and keep yourself accountable, or else you'll just stay. That's the only thing. You will just stay at once a month. All right, let's keep going. Ooh, and this is what could happen. Say you chose podcast as your pillar content. On the right-hand side, this is the short form content that could come out of that. You're on social media, you're sending out emails, regular contact with your audience. And then, yes, we are putting a lot of emphasis on short form, but you can use your long form to boost other long form. Say you're planning a webinar, you might take some insights from your podcast and put it in there. Because oftentimes when people are speaking, they tend to say things in ways they haven't heard before. And it's like, ooh, that's good. I need to use that again. So you might just find yourself doing that. And that's just working smarter. I love it. All right, now we're on to you, Matt.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You just triggered something that I had to write down that I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So I didn't want to miss that. So I get asked this all the time. I do all the sales here at ProudMouth. And so I get asked all the time, what is the real ROI? And I think a lot of times people mistake vanity metrics as actual return on investment. And so I'm just going to dive into this just a little bit, because the only tangible ROI that any of you really care about is sales, and I understand that. But there is other things that does come from you creating content, and the number one thing is the content itself really has value. Right? You don't ever, Jessica, I love saying this, and I've probably said it too many times, but you don't ever walk into your office and look at a piece of artwork on the wall and say, you haven't gotten me a new client, right? But for some reason, the art that you're creating, because content creation is art, it's storytelling, right? There's a lot of artistic components to it, but you're asking it to do so much more of a heavy lift than it really should, right? You obviously want to get people to take action, to book a meeting, get in your email list. All of those things are very, very tangible, and things that you can go ahead and measure. How many subscribers, how many listens, how many new, people you have connected on social media, how many people downloaded your thing, did you increase your email list, what is your email list doing, your click-through rates, your engagement. All of those things are wildly tangible, but I really want to focus just very quickly on some of the intangible things, right? Some things that you really, really can't measure, which is growth and brand, right? You can't measure that. I mean, there are ways to do it, but none of you are willing to do that because it's far and away too much work. Not to be a jerk, but there are ways to check your brand. But a lot of it is going to be intangible, right? The other thing too is this real emotional connection. You're building long-term trust with clients and prospects, your audience, with more content that you create. That's just the reality of the situation. The more great, meaningful content you put out, the more connection you're going to get, right? The other thing that I think is also intangible, because very few of you are asking these questions, are client loyalty and retention, right? You have no idea how many of your clients are really ready to leave you, but by putting out great pieces of communication. In fact, Y-Charts came out with this great study that said 75% of your clients are one bad piece or no communication away from leaving you. So how do you solve that? Well, you solve it with content marketing. And then the other thing too is you are going to continue to build the impact, the awareness, and your reputation for your company, right? That's so incredibly important these days. And by creating unbelievable long form content and then atomizing it, making more content from that content is only going to make you look better as an organization. All right, so now we're going to talk about the brand thing. And we're actually going to do an example of a great brand here in just a minute. But branding is much more than just a logo. So you see this here, right? This is a ProudMouth logo. But you also have to understand we have a 15-page brand manifesto that talks about the personality of the brand, our major talking points, the look and feel of our communication. How do we want to be perceived within our marketplace? Who is our ideal clients? Sonically, what are we supposed to sound like? I mean, we have all of these things fleshed out because it allows us to really maintain a very good brand standard here. And you need to do the same thing, because a strong brand really does make scaling so much easier. And there are three major points that we want to talk to about that. And then we're going to talk about our example. Number one, and I think I've already beat this drum pretty hard, which is recognition and trust. But let's talk about number two, which is smoother content creation. When you know that you have 10 standard brand messages, you learn how to weave that into all of your content. Rise above the noise, be your own loud, unapologetically be yourself. Marketing is fundamentally changed. All of the things that you've heard us say repeatedly at ProudMouth is because we have such great brand language, and a strong brand makes our communication so much easier. And that also allows you to be consistent. So you're not saying this over here. And this was just good. I didn't talk about this the first time we did this, but this was one of the things that Kirk and I really struggled with when we built our company here. Was he was saying things and I was saying things, and we were saying similar things, but there were differences enough where people got a little bit confused. And so, and most of it was me, to be brutally honest. And so we really needed to do a hard reset on making sure that the language that I was using as the face of the company was as consistent with everything that we really needed. And I'm telling you right now, it is so unbelievably powerful when you have that, because you built such a strong foundation that you can build a juggernaut of a business on a kick-ass success and a super strong brand. And let's talk about very quickly a really, really great brand. Now, this, full disclosure, this is a client of ours. They're a client that we absolutely love dearly because the content that they create is really, really remarkable. So the foundation of the Mitlin Money Mindset podcast and Mitlin Financial all has to do with joy, which is so not what you would think a financial advisor is going to focus on. But when you look at this, when you look at the color scheme, when you look at everything that Mitlin is putting forth here, you're going to start seeing some serious consistency. And as you scroll down, Jessica, bam, you're going to see the word joy. There's joy is there again. All of the sudden, you start seeing more and more about how you can fulfill their message. And their big picture question is, what did you do today that brought you joy? I mean, look at the pictures. These people are joyful people, right? That's what we really want. And different people have different kinds of joy. And Mitlin wants to meet you where they're at, right? And then, of course, great CTAs here. Download it, get a copy of the book, all of these different pieces. But it's all really, really focused on joy. And we have a piece of content here that I think is just so much fun to highlight, which is the brand story. So do you want to take this, Jess, or do you want me to take this?
I was wondering, do you want to have a look at their podcast first? Just to say what a natural extension of their brand messaging. They're not reinventing the wheel here. It's this podcast, Mitlin Money Mindset, is all about what did you do today that brought you joy. That's what informs the conversations. And then you see like the photo, like it's everywhere. The purple, the Larry is smiling. What do you think of this, Matt?
I mean, everything, right? And as you look at what about the podcast is, it really sets every single solitary thing up. It is on brand from beginning to end. From the time when you become a client of Mitlin Financial, everything through their whole process reinforces joy and reinforces their brand. It's almost perfect. So do you want to set this clip up, or do you want me to?
I want you to.
Okay. So I had the honor, and I'm very honored for this, that I was the guest host for their 200th episode, because what ended up happening was they started their podcast before they ever really knew about us, and they were doing it on their own for a long time. And part of our system here is you need to create an origin story podcast and really talk about who you are, what you do, and what makes you unique. But the big question that I had, in being a little bit of a dork, I couldn't figure out where the hell Mitlin came from, because it's not Larry's name. It's not anybody's name in the family. It's not his last name. His last name is Sprung. And so I got to ask him the question, and this ended up becoming not only a clip that we created for them, but something that they use often. But I want you to look at Larry. Because as he's explaining this, I want you to try to figure out how many things are so on brand in this, whatever this is, this 30-second clip, 60-second clip. So, all right, go ahead and play the clip.
I need a quick pause to make sure I played it or
shared with sound.
I just have that feel. Okay, let us play.
And by the way, I need to talk to the team about the fact that this is the frozen shot. I look utterly ridiculous, but whatever. That's just my vanity. All right, play a clip. So explain it. Where did the word Mitlin come from, and what does it mean?
Yeah, so it is a smash up, pure smash up. Mitlin, M-I-T, came from my wife's grandfather, whose name was Mitchell. L-I-N came from my mother, Linda, who I mentioned earlier. And basically, we took their two names. Mitchell was a very key person in my wife's life, and my mom, Linda, was a key person in my life. And we ended up using those three letters from each of their names to bring it together for the firm name Mitlin that we have today. So yes, it's not named after me, not named after my last name or anything like that. And it's named after two very important people in my wife and I's lives.
Yeah, if you watch this, you have so many things to talk to Larry about, right? I mean, this is what really great content is. Plus, he's wearing the shirt. There's a picture of him and his wife in the back. You have the be happy thing. And this is not in that aspect ratio, but off his left shoulder is an actual copy of the book, right? I mean, everything is there. Everything is there. They're firing on all cylinders, right? So let's continue to really discuss this idea of how do you create content to strengthen your brand, because one of the most important things is the core values of your company, and what do you need to do to make sure that you're maintaining your values in the content you create. And so Larry has this other wonderful post, and this is a post about how proud, it's called a proud, he calls it a proud dad moment, right? And so this is a picture of his son talking about resourcefulness and all of these things. Look, joy is there again, proud dad moment. Now, they talk a lot about their family. They're very family focused. Everybody at Mitlin is, but Denise and Larry are specifically. But what a neat sort of thing. This is a great post about how his son problem solved. He actually got a ride to go to hockey but then when he came home, he still went ahead and, fixed the tire instead of expecting somebody else to do it for him. And if you scroll down, right, the best part about this is the engagement. 10 comments, 20 plus likes, and then look at just the wonderful things. Great job, proud dad moment for sure. This is the sort of way that you get real engagement on your posts and really reinforce that strong brand message.
When something like family is such a central part of your brand, it just in a practical way, it really helps inform what you're going to be posting about. So it really does make it easier to not just fill up a content calendar, because that's not what this is about, but to fill it up with purpose and with content that's really going to resonate with your audience.
I totally forgot though. One of the reasons why we wanted this is because we were going to talk about the 4-to-1 rule. So when you have a brand, what's really important for you to understand is for every 4 pieces of very financial advisee expertise content, you should have 1 piece of personal content. And what you're going to find is there's a halo effect around the personal content, which hands down is going to get way more interaction than your busy professionally financial advisory expertise stuff. And so that's another reason why we wanted to have this in there, is because a lot of you are only creating content that has to do with you as a professional, but people buy from you as a human. And if you are a very firmly rooted family person who potentially loves hockey, which is another huge thing in Larry and Denise's life, you're going to really feel a deep connection with this firm. And then you sprinkle the joy onto everything, and it's almost impossible not to do business with.
Yeah. Our next Rocket Booster is all about getting your expertise out there, but how? And not just how, but how do you do it in a way that actually stands out and sets you apart? And how do you not run out of ideas? So we created this Venn diagram here, and something I want you to focus on is your unique expertise and point of view. What are the things that you can say that no one else can say, that differentiates yourself from the competition? And I'm going to say it's you, it's your experiences, it's everything that Larry Sprung and Denise Sprung are doing with their marketing and bringing their family and their family experiences into it. But what is actually making you unique? Because you have a lot of expertise, you can create educational content, but unless you're infusing you into it, it's likely to just blend in. And especially with AI, where it's gotten easier to create that kind of content. And then what does your audience need? We talked about earlier about what they want. Now, what is the information that they are seeking for right now? So this could be that timely real estate, they're looking to buy a house and are thinking about mortgage strategies. Maybe that's the content that they need right now. And then business alignment. Think back to your big picture goals, like client retention. How does your topic idea intersect with that as well? And I love talking about the stages of awareness. Eugene Schwartz came up with this, because when you're focused on filling all of these buckets, it's going to be really hard to run out of ideas. And this is going to give you a well-rounded content plan. So let me explain before I get too far ahead. The first one is unaware, where these people in your audience, they don't even know that they have a problem yet. And this is the hardest group of people to market to. And frankly, this group usually isn't ready to invest in long form content because they don't know. They don't know they have an issue. So bite-sized short videos are usually the way to start reaching this group. So it might be that when you're geared up to record a video, your podcast, you might just back up the content a little bit and do a quick video for this audience. And then problem aware. Okay, now these people know something is up, but they want to know more. What is the impact of the issue? What are the effects? How are other people dealing with it? This is the group of people that's on Reddit and YouTube. This is where educational content starts and your unique perspective starts coming into play. And then you go into solution aware. They know what the problem is, and they might have some ideas of fixes, but they don't know about you yet. Now, this is the time to keep up the educational content, but start tying in your client success stories and case studies, whether real or hypothetical, whatever compliance allows. And then product aware. They are exploring options, including you. Now they know about you, but they also know about other people. So what sets you apart? Mm-hmm. And this could be maybe the time to double down, triple down on who you are as a person, because that is always going to set you apart. People buy from people. And then most aware, they know everything. They just need that extra nudge to say yes at this point. And then there'd be another stage that's not on the screen. And that's where these people are working with you. And not just that, but they are your raving fans, where they are recommending and referring other people to you, even without you having to ask. And you certainly do not want to forget about this group when you're creating your content, because this content is going to help drive that advocacy from them and drive loyalty, and it's going to increase your value. If you're a financial advisor, think about how you can be an expert guide throughout their life, throughout different milestones. Think about that kind of content. Now, I want to show you an example from another one of our awesome clients, Michelle Gessner. And she recorded an episode about how to find the right financial advisor. And I think her episode summary is just fabulous. The top takeaways, because she is going through all the questions that someone would be asking themselves when they're starting to look at advisors. And she's also answering things that, oh, maybe, if you're not an advisor, you're probably not going to consider this, but you see, oh, okay, this is something important that Michelle's going to help me with. Now, something like this, when we're thinking about the stages of awareness, this is out of product, this is in the solution awareness stage. Mm-hmm. It's easy for it to maybe look like problem, but no, at this point, the person knows they're interested in working with an advisor. Now it's a matter of finding the right one. And I love what Michelle has done here in this clip we're going to look at, where she's talking about a really important aspect of working with an advisor all the time, but we're all feeling it right now, which is how often should you hear from your advisor? So let's listen to this.
You'll want to know how often you're going to hear from this advisor. I've heard and read about reasons why people don't want to work with their advisor anymore, why they get fired, why advisors are not, maintained by a client. And that's number one on the list, is they don't hear from their advisors often enough. So this is an important question. Now, in our case, we're reaching out to our clients on a monthly basis. We do quarterly commentary. We do quarterly touches. We do annual investment reviews and annual financial planning updates. But that doesn't mean that we can't do them more often. Most of our clients don't want them more often, but that's generally what what works for our clients. You'll want to know how often you're going.
Something I really like about this clip is that Michelle opens it by talking about, people stop working with advisors because of a lack of communication. So she's saving people from the heartache, even before they get into it, is find out clearly how much you should expect to hear from that advisor to know if you should even be investing in that relationship. Matt, I'm dying to know your impressions of this.
You're absolutely right. It's such a wonderful, really getting to this whole over idea of social proof, which is what we're going to talk about here in just a minute. This is the social proof on why she is a good advisor. And she's also setting very clear expectations, right? If your advisor isn't doing these things, they're not me. Right? That's good marketing, right? It's showing the difference between you and the advisor down the street. There's a whole bunch of other things too. And I could get super wicked nerdy on this, but I'm not going to get super nerdy. Is her eye contact, her voice, her pace, pentameter, volume, and inflection. She even pauses a little bit there just to emphasize the point, which is just such a brilliant, presentation technique that not everybody has, but you can tell Michelle has studied this.
There's so much to learn from Michelle. I also like how she just subtly but directly says, here's what we do. And it doesn't come off as salesy. It's kind of just contextualized.
Yep.
So that's really, really just a great example of that solution awareness piece. Now, if Michelle wanted to create another episode and move it into product awareness, she could totally do that.
Yeah.
And it might be, is Gessner Wealth,
right
strategies right for you? Because now they know about the firm and they're maybe checking it out and comparing it to others.
All right. Everything that you create should be having a compounding factor. And all of you know what compound interest is, and compound marketing is the exact same thing. It's adding increased value and more of it over time, right? But the reason why you want to compound your credibility here is really for social proof, so that people know who, just like the Michelle. That's why I brought it up with Michelle, right? You feel who she is and what she does and why you should go ahead and interact with her, which is vitally, vitally important. But that's all well and good. But there's some technique behind something that you can do that's really, really powerful, and which is bringing on guests. And what guests do is they actually don't just compound your credibility, but if they're saying, I'm going to be on your show, that's basically endorsing you and just being honest, right? And if you do this correctly, you're also going to gain access to their audience. And so let's go ahead and show this next clip. There's so many things in this clip that I want to talk about, because when you bring on a guest who actually does really understand what we call the perfect content formula here, right, which is storytelling, education, entertainment, call to action. When you have all of those things in place, if you have a great guest, they hit on all of those things, you're going to be able to find super kick-ass clips like the one that we have here to show you how really powerful this, and I'm sorry, do you remember how long this is? Yeah, so it's about a minute. So and we're going to play the whole damn thing because there's so many things here. But I just wanted to highlight the fact that, so this is Terry's podcast, right? So Terry Wheeler's podcast. He asks a very, very simple question, but the way that his guest explains this hits every one of these pieces of the perfect content formula, but also positions herself as the expert to solve the problem. All right, let's go ahead and play it.
What if there was another option that instead of putting all of the cash into the new home, you put 60% down and kept 40% of it for credit cards, repairs, travel, the list goes on.
Yeah.
And now you have a reverse mortgage, no mortgage payment required, no mortgage payment required. You put 60% down and now you've got the rest. Versus, okay, so now you could either do cash offer, or you can go get a forward loan, right? We can talk about a forward loan. Typically, I think people put maybe 5-10% down these days, traditional loan. You can put 5-10% down, but you have a mortgage payment required. A lot of these seniors do not want to have to make a mortgage payment.
Okay, so she just punched you in the face with that last statement there, right? She started it off by talking about, you know, what you can do and how you need to think differently. But what if there was a different option? She also repeated things, which is a huge storytelling component to make sure that those points are going to land in your brain, right? But she also, she even leaned in on the storytelling from an entertainment perspective. This woman has such a polished skill of presenting these sorts of ideas. This is aspirational for a lot of you. This is where you should try to go. And then she has a very gentle call to action right at the end, which is, you know, people who are retiring don't want a mortgage payment, right? And so that just, okay, well, can you help me with that? Well, of course I can, because she's a mortgage person, right? But really just ticked off not only all the perfect content formula, but how do you get engaged, great content from your guests. Now, the price of admission for her to come on Terry's podcast was she had to be willing to share this with her audience, right? So he's giving her access to hundreds of clients who could potentially use her product. Therefore, she needs to do the same thing. And when you set clear expectations on the front end of having guests on your show, then this is it's so much easier to make sure that it happens on the back end.
I've watched this clip several times now, and whenever she leans in, I lean in.
I know, yes.
And I know it's not just me. It's just there's something natural about that, and it feels like, oh, I'm getting in on something exclusive here, which I totally am.
Well, and we've studied that psychologically. It's called mirroring. And so, and I used to test this all the time when I was a coach and a consultant. And I could make you do it, right? And so there are very, very specific techniques from a sales perspective and from an influence perspective to get somebody to really start mirroring you very quickly. And when you do it, all of a sudden, there's actually kind of a sync that happens. And then from a persuasion perspective, you have a lot of power in those situations. And this woman studied that and knows that.
Right. Supercharge your sharing. Actually, I think this starts with you.
Yeah, so I think that it's incredibly important for you to understand that you need to create an enormous amount of content. And I'm not trying to overwhelm all of you. It's just the reality of the situation, because the rule of 7 is, again, what's on the screen here, but they have to see the message. Just because you create 7 pieces of content doesn't mean that they saw 7 pieces of content, right? So this is why you have to be ever present and omnipresent. You have to be posting with massive amounts of consistency. And Jessica, we didn't talk about this on the original one, but LinkedIn just really weirded up their algorithm again. So I'm getting notifications of people seeing my posts from 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, what the hell? That was 3 weeks ago. But that's the rule of 7s. I need them to see and actually understand and hopefully interact with my content 7 times before they consider taking action. And that's the biggest difference. That's not 7 times and they're going to buy or download or subscribe. No. That is how many times it takes for them to consider taking the next step. And that's vitally important. And you break this down even deeper.
Yes. Actually, did you want to look at this too at the bottom?
Well, I'm glancing over that, and I was doing that intentionally, to be honest, just because I think that so many people have just such unrealistic expectations on ROI that I really just wanted to focus a lot more on the fact that you have to create the content and have it be there, ever present and omnipresent. And then, yes, with the ROIs are definitely something you should consider too. But yeah, I think the next slide that you're going to dive into is even more important for people to really get what content they should create that's going to get interaction.
Let's do it. Yes. This is all about not just you sharing your content, but encouraging your audience to share it by really boosting that shareability factor. And what gets people's attention, it's going to be you. It's going to be your life experiences. And we call this breaking the ice content, because not only does it spur sharing, but it spurs and sparks conversations. That educational content that really focuses on your expertise is so important. And it had, like we've talked about, that 4-to-1 rule. It has that place in your strategy, but so does this content that's not squarely educational. We could argue you're always educating people in some way, but it's not, you know, rules about 401ks or anything like that. It's all about you. And this content tends to be a lot easier for people to comment on, whether that's in the comment, whether that's emailing you back if it's a newsletter, commenting on a social post, DMing you. Because some of those financial topics, oh Matt, like I'm in the industry and I find it intimidating because it's so personal.
Yeah.
Not everyone wants to talk about that, period. And, you know, and not publicly, especially not publicly. And if it's LinkedIn, it's like, oh, my colleagues could, you know, there's this layer where people in my network, my colleagues can see this. So how can you create conversations? That's what these are. How can you invite conversation? Talk about things you've been through in your life. And this, I think it'd be interesting actually if this were financial, because then you can show your audience that you've been through some of the same challenges that they've been through, that you really truly get it. But you can talk about non-financial things you've been through, you know, like preparing for a marathon and what was that like? Talk about pop culture. Something that's not on here, but I know people love it, is nostalgia. Like what toys? We've seen this work really well. What toys did you love as a kid? Like, did you love Popples? You know, what is a popple? You could have a whole, I don't know if you know Popples, Matt, but it's like you could have a whole discussion about that. And we have a really, really great example that I can't wait to get to. And this is by Daniel Goodman. And the essence of this, it was a family photo and he got them professionally taken. And you can see one on the left that is picture perfect, right, Matt? And then one on the right where how does he describe it? He talks about embracing the chaos and adjusting to whatever comes our way, and what a great depiction of that. And then he invites his audience to share what is your favorite unplanned family moment. And don't we all have those? You have it, especially if you have young kids in your life, you have it. You know, look how many people join this conversation. This is just fantastic. Now, if I were Daniel, if I were an advisor and I was thinking back to the, you know, different kind of ideas we were just looking at personal content to share, I might say, wow, like this really generated interest. How might I keep sharing milestones about my family? I love this idea, Matt, that you shared before, where he could create a carousel where every year he takes a new photo and features it. And maybe there's one where it's just like the outtakes, kind of like this, and you vote on your favorite one. I think that would be so, so fun. And it's so personable. What's your take, Matt?
It's so wildly personable. I mean, it's very, very difficult to not smile when you see this. And it also really does show that in a world where perfection is so expected in financial services, that it really is the messy stuff in between that really makes for a great life, right? And I love, there's so many opportunities here. Baby takes first steps, share it, right? Kids start playing t-ball, share it, right? And this isn't trying to, you know, use your family to your business's benefit. And I want to be very clear about this. People want to know this stuff about you. And especially when you open it up and share this, he's going to be getting questions about this really forever. And you want to make sure that when you're leaning into that 4-to-1 rule, that you're sharing the things that you really, really, truly love, because you're going to be happy to talk about it. I'm assuming he's probably pretty happy to talk about his family.
I think so, yes. Okay, we could talk about that all day. Okay, zooming into our final rocket booster. Okay, we are synergizing. It's very difficult to say. Synergizing everything now. And what I have in front of you is a content workflow. So you've seen the 7 rocket boosters, and now we're really bringing everything together to show you how this becomes a repeatable system. Because if you have all the great components, but you're not able to do it again and again, or if you're doing fits and starts, it's just not really worth a lot. So let's turn this into a system. And we're seeing here in the first step, you are thinking of your topic idea, and you're going through all of the essentials we talked about, where you're thinking about your audience and which stage of awareness they're in. What do they need? What are they looking for? What is your unique perspective and expertise? How can you weave in your values? How can you bring in credibility, client success stories, guests? And then, like we just talked about, you're looking for opportunities to bring in pop culture when it's relevant. You know, what is a movie you just saw? Life lessons, any interests that show your personal side. And then you're getting into creation mode. And at this point, Matt, it's kind of like following the bouncing ball. Like just do these steps. These are more the technical things because you've done the really creative part. Now you're outlining, you're scheduling. This is really pertaining to podcasts, but you can translate this into writing as well. You edit writing, of course, and then you're writing your episode summary for a podcast with all the right components for visibility. And then you're distributing it. This is the atomization where you're really making sure it gets in front of your audience. You're following that perfect content formula Matt talked about. And then you have a list, maybe very similar to this one, of content that you're always producing. And then the sharing, which we know is so important. You could have in your workflow that you're always going to be scheduling your posts. This is such a personal preference and also just a matter of what can you sustain as a team. I know some people like to publish their posts manually because they just like to check the formatting and then they're there present on the platform. I think either way, Matt, it's so, when I say the word present, this sparks something. It's so important to carve out time in your day that's designated to engaging with your audience. We recommend, at least 10 minutes in the morning and then in the afternoon. That's where you're responding to comments, but then you're also strategically engaging with your network's posts, clients, prospects, centers of influence. Then let's go to the next part is, optimizing and resharing. So this is when you're looking at those ROIs, the things you can measure, the things you can't, and you're evaluating and making some decisions of how will this inform your future content. And also, we didn't quite touch on this, but what might you share again? Because you don't always have to create something brand new for that short form content. If you had a LinkedIn post that got a lot of engagement, maybe you want to republish it in about 6 months. And people have opinions on this, whether to republish it exactly as it was. I don't think it matters that much personally, but you may, if you're like me, you'll look at your own writing and you'll see an opportunity to fix the flow. So you might end up making some adjustments, totally up to you. And then Matt, this isn't talked about that much, I don't think, but I think we should also look at the content that flopped. The content that flopped, but it fulfilled the Venn diagram we looked at earlier, where it met your client's needs and your content and your business strategy. And because some of this content just deserves a second chance. Maybe that first line just needs to be rewritten so it's a little bit more compelling. If it was a story and you didn't have a photo, oh my goodness, add a photo. So, don't forget that content too, the Misfit Island content.
Yeah. Well, so this is I actually did my first live demo of this yesterday, which is our new PodRocket Influence Academy. And listen, there's two major things that everybody keeps saying, oh my God, I can't believe you guys created this. And I have to give all props to Kirk Lowe, my business partner on this, the co-founder of ProudMouth. This has been his focus and his baby for such a long time. But we have something called the Influence Readiness Test. And this Influence Readiness Test is an opportunity for you to look at all 7 rocket boosters that Jessica and I just covered today and see where you have gaps. But more importantly, it spits out an individual tailored action plan for you to start filling up those gaps, which is absolutely fantastic. There really isn't anything like it in the industry. The other thing that is we keep getting positive feedback is our Ask an Expert or our office hours, which is an opportunity. Jessica, you're the one who does these here for ProudMouth, which is, every twice a week, you can show up and ask really any questions you want. But more importantly, you get to start hanging out with other financial services professionals and other experts who truly want to be in a community and have other people that are doing the same thing that they are and bouncing ideas off. That's one of my favorite things about office hours and Ask an Expert, is when the clients just start talking and you and I get to sit back and just hear all of the cool things that everybody's trying. Now, on top of that, we also have 30 plus courses in there that you and or your team can take in order for you to market in a compliant, but more importantly, an effective manner to make sure that you're truly accelerating your influence. Would love to have you in there. It's very, very inexpensive. It's only $99 a month. And if you join for the full year, you get a 20% discount. It's a very, very good thing. I mean, if you just break down the money of being able to spend up to 8 hours with Jessica, right? I mean, you're looking at $1,000 per month just for that. And we're charging $99. So with the influence readiness test, all of the Ask an Expert office hours, plus all of the courses, this is an unbelievable value. And we'd love to have as many of you join this as possible because we just are really proud of it and we think it'd be hugely beneficial. So listen, when you're really looking at ways to accelerate your influence and make it so that you can create ubiquitous content that's going to be everywhere, but more importantly on brand, and let people get to know who you are without losing your mind, that's what today was all about. What can we do to make it so that you have the opportunity to create unbelievably engaging content to further your brand, further your mission, and of course, get you new clients? The atomic content method and what we do here at ProudMouth is that every single solitary day for our clients. So for Jessica, this is Matt Halloran and all of us here at ProudMouth. We'll see you on another webinar very soon.